Oh,
Yeah, it was baptism by fire, literally.
Hey, everybody.
hi, Morgan.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is beautiful.
Yeah. Dale Danny's joining and you have a quorum. The only one that's not here. Oh, and here comes Dave. Just joined. So we got
Sonia's having trouble connecting to
Hey,
our audio. Her link's not working, so I've resent them. I'm not sure. And it looks like we have somebody in the attendee number ending 30306, if they could identify themselves. Might have to hit *6.
you know,
Hey, Lincoln, that's a cool background.
Can you hear me now, Cassie?
Oh yes, is that your phone, Sonia?
It is. It's me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, I'm gonna see if I can. Ooh, I don't know if I can move you into our. We'll leave you in there, but I'm not sure how to move you into the meeting. But you already are listed in the meeting as well. So.
also, so everybody knows, we have Gary Gillette from the Bonner Band, Karen Sippy with Trees from Missoula, and CELAC, and Downtown Master Plan, and West.
Hey, Donna, I can hardly hear you. Is anyone else having trouble?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Okay, I must have had my phone ring. Every time my
Great.
phone rings, it shuts my sound down. We also have Gary Gillette from Bonner Band in the attendees, Karen Sippy with Trees for Missoula, and numerous other park support volunteer groups, almost too numerous to even name anymore, and Madison Donor with the media.
So I'd like to call the March 9th Parks and Recreation meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Cassie, would you read the public script?
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Right. So welcome to our Zoom webinar. The following link is to join the agenda item. The instructions to join are listed at the top of the meeting. Our big one right here is public comment. So when Dale calls for public comment, please raise your hand in the meeting room. I will able to unmute you for you to speak. It's *6 to unmute and *9 to raise or lower your hand by phone.
Thank you, Cassie. Before we get into the agenda, I want to introduce David Westfall. He was appointed by the mayor last week to be our newest Parks and Rec board member. Donna and I spent an hour with him doing some orientation last week. And I think there's more planned in the month of March. So David, welcome.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, my name is Dave Westfall, and my wife and I have been in Missoula for about 4.5 years now. We moved here from Indianapolis. We followed our kids. We've got 2 daughters that got married and both moved out here about 5 and 6 years ago, maybe 6 and 7 now. And one has 2 daughters and one has 2 sons. So we've got a big full family of kids, plenty to keep us busy. we moved into we were living in the South Hills for about a year, and then we moved to the Lewis and Clark neighborhood about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And that's where I ran into Jane Kelly at one of the neighborhood general meetings out at Playfair Park, and got talked. I didn't really get talked into, but I volunteered to be part of the neighborhood council, and so I've been the co-chair of the Lewis and Clark Neighborhood Council for those 3.5 years or so. I also then we formed a steering committee for the Bancroft Ponds initiative, and so I chair that as well. I got to know Morgan Valiant through that. And I also, I should have said, it's great to see everyone, and I do see some familiar faces. So for those of you that maybe recognize me, it's great to see you and all the new folks as well. So I'm also a board member of the Missoula Development Authority, which is a county board that oversees tax increment financing. And I'm also on the Missoula Organization of Realtors. I'm a licensed realtor here in Montana. And I'm on the MOR Public Affairs, used to be Government Affairs, but now it's Public Affairs Committee. And Dwight Easton, who chairs that, he got me introduced to, he brought up the notion of board positions, and I kind of raised my hand and said, I think Parks and Rec might be something that I'd be interested in with my background. And so he got me to fill out the application, and
Here you are.
Here I am. So it's great to meet all you, and I'm really, I look forward to doing I look forward to my involvement with the Parks and Rec Board, and will do my best to contribute and responsibly serve the community. So thank you.
Thank you, David, very much.
You're welcome.
John?
Yeah, David, just as a quick aside, I know you and I exchanged some email, but another connection. I'm from Indianapolis as well. I moved
no
out here
kidding,
about
really?
19 years ago. Grew up on the Broad Ripple, Glendale area, and graduated
sure.
from North Central in 1981.
Broad Ripple is that's a very hip place. Yeah. All right. Good to hear that story. All right.
So
I
welcome,
was gonna,
David.
and this is Wendy. Welcome, David. I was gonna ask what the connection is with Indianapolis, because it seems like there's so many people who have come out here. John, a lot of folks. It seems like everyone knows each other.
Well, I think Hoosiers really feel welcome in Montana. It reminds us a lot of home, except with mountains. And, we're friendly people. So people who want to come to the mountains, we have our own little Hoosier mafia here in Missoula.
You do.
I didn't know that.
I'm also a member of that mafia. I'm from
Oh, really?
Really?
Huh.
So Morgan, we've known each other for 3 years, and I don't think we've talked about Indiana. Where?
Bloomington. Dave, you're just all business. Every time we talk, we get right down to it. That's what I like about you.
Well, yeah, but all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy or Dave a dull boy. So got to keep it in balance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the agenda, please.
Yeah.
So Cassie, would you call the roll call, please?
Dale Harris.
Here.
Oh, my button's not pulling up. John O'Connor.
Here,
Wendy.
Here.
Sonia.
Here,
Danny.
Here.
Margie.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, everybody. The next agenda item is approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes, please.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? Any member of the public have any public comments regarding our minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We did the new board member introduction. So any public or guest comments? We'll wait a few seconds to see if anyone raise their hand.
We have public comment from Catherine Isaacson. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry, this is the first time I've done this, so I'm a little, not Zoom, of course, but this meeting. So My name is Catherine Isaacson. I live in the South Hills, and I was wanting to join this meeting because I have some concerns about Peary Park. I sent a couple emails. I sent an email a few weeks ago that some of you might have received related to an interaction I had at this park with dogs off leash. And so I'm a bit concerned about signage in this park, and people, it's used a lot. I walk my dogs there every day, and most people are great having their dogs on leash, and a lot of people don't though. And so I wanted to bring that up to see if that's something that can be possible, as well as trash reciprocals for this particular park. One thing I notice, I walk a lot in the South Hills trail system, which is awesome. But one thing I notice is there's no trash reciprocals for this particular area. And so I'm wondering how, as a member of the public and a citizen that pays taxes, how we can how I can help make this happen.
So Donna or Morgan, do you have any response?
Hi, Catherine. Hopefully you received my response to your email. We have submitted work orders. It's on our list to visit the site. I have contacted animal control. I also provided some ideas on what the neighborhood can do to help. I will go ahead and resend that and make sure you got it.
One last thing to add, we have done a site visit. This is an area that we've inventoried. Part of the 2018 open space bond was to upgrade our trailheads and access points. Peary Park is not alone in the fact that it has poor signage and not good amenities. And so this is an area that we do have on our radar to improve in 2020. So we are developing that as part of our total trailhead upgrades across conservation lands. So that stuff will be coming.
Awesome. That's all I need. That's all I wanted to hear.
No, thank you so much for being patient and for staying engaged with the management of Peary Park. It's a great place.
Thank you, Catherine.
Could we add that as a future agenda item, please?
Do you mean the trails and trailheads updates, John, or?
Well, that's usually, I mean, that's going to be part of an agenda at some point, but this particular park after the site visit.
Yes, the answer is yes. Any other public comment? Cassie, do you see any other public comment?
I do not. We have a new, the individual number ending 605 wants to identify themselves. I can rename you for the minutes. Otherwise, no public comment.
Moving right along to our action items. The first action item is appoint park board members to the Extraordinary Events Committee and the Missoula Art Park committees. These are two separate committees. Before we do that, Donna, would you give a quick report of what this is all about?
I will. City of Missoula has management agreements with the Missoula Art Museum for management of the Missoula Art Park. And we have another management agreement with the Missoula Downtown Association for management of the events and performance plaza and stage at Caras Park. These management agreements evolved over time. They are super helpful to the department, and I think the public as a whole, in that both the Missoula Art Museum and the Missoula Downtown Association provide additional resources across the spectrum, from improvements to maintenance to management of both those facilities. Parks and Recreation still provides the primary maintenance to the facilities, but certainly the partnership is much better for all of us working together. What we do is we annually host a joint subcommittee for each. And so we have two members, for example, from the Missoula Downtown Association Caras Park Management Agreement, plus one neighborhood representative. We do the same with the Art Museum, two members from the Art Museum, one neighborhood representative. They meet with two of our park board members to form basically a subcommittee working group. The primary reasons for existence are for transparency, because we have really important areas being managed by nonprofits. The public expressed interest over the years in a way to participate in what policy might be and what programs might be brought to the sites. And also for this committee would oversee any of the extraordinary events, and the extraordinary events are defined in each of the agreements, and they're limited to how many there can be. And extraordinary events are usually defined in size, number of humans, and they vary between the two sites because obviously the sites are significantly different, and or they might vary in their complexity of requirement to offer that particular event. So we will have one meeting this year. The Missoula Art Museum Art Park meeting will be in April, and the Missoula Downtown Association in Caras Park will be in May. I don't have any pending action items for extraordinary events this year. We canceled the meeting last year, like we canceled several advisory committee meetings because of the pandemic. So I wanted to get us back on board, make sure we had our 2 members from Park Board, and then we'll conduct those 2 meetings. They should only take about a half hour, and they'll meet from 11:30 till about noon right before this meeting. And then 1 member of our board will report out during the Park Board meeting as to what happened at the subcommittee.
Thank you, Donna. Hey, Sonia, are you willing to continue to serve?
I am, yes.
So really, so that's great. Thank you, Sonia. So, and Mark, you expressed an interest?
Yes, I did.
So if someone make a motion to appoint Mark and Sonia, that would be great. Waiting for a motion.
I'll move to appoint Margie and Sonia to the respective boards.
Is that specific enough?
Are you both willing to serve both? I mean, that's wonderful because they're a lot alike.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, I am, Donna. I was already on both, and I would be happy to stay on both.
Yeah, I'll be happy to serve on both.
Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any more discussion? Any discussion from the members of the public? All those in favor say aye.
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 I
Opposed. Motion passes. Thank you very much. So the next agenda item is the adoption of the Mount Deanstone management plan. And Morgan, it's you're up. And Morgan, is Jeff going to be visiting with us today?
No, he won't. We actually, we'll be giving an update on conservation lands at our next, at the April Park Board meeting. So I was gonna bring him in at that point.
That's great.
So yeah, this should be a fairly quick item. It's something you guys, we reviewed in depth last month. We have been working, as you know, on a Mount Deanstone Preserve Recreation and Special Use Management Plan with the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee for about a year. That document has been plugging right along. At your February meeting, you set a 2-week public comment period online to solicit comments about our final draft of the plan. What I've got pulled up right now is the Mount Deanstone Preserve public comment synopsis and response. And so this really, at CLAC's last meeting, in March, we went through each of these 68 comments that we received line by line, read them all, discussed whether or not they warranted changes to the plan, and then responded to each of those in kind. I'm not going to go through the entire report. All that report is attached to this document. And so I was just going to focus on the changes that we recommended making to the plan based on the public comment that we received. And I'll show you where they are on the plan as well. We had and John, you can pipe in at any time. I thought we had a really productive discussion. It was really good. It's always nice when you get a good bit of public comment. And I really do thank everybody that did respond. We got some really in-depth comment. And you can tell a lot of people are both excited and then also really care about this landscape. Really simple. Some of the initial comments that we made are for clarity and editing. Essentially, on page 1, within our introduction, we added a line to allow for us to put the exact date stamp on when this plan is officially adopted, which could very well be today. That's the item that you have in front of you right now. There was some confusion in some of our comments about the names for some of our trails. And although we had it in the narrative that trails like the High, Wide, and Handsome Trail, that is a trail that that's the working name that Five Valleys Land Trust had given this trail. And we explained that in the narrative, but we added a little bit to this map to just say that, you know, property names and trail names are largely for reference only. Obviously, there are some adopted names on the parcel, but woodsy property, corridor property, High, Wide, and Handsome, those aren't names that are going to exist on the landscape. They're just in reference or for the map for reference purposes. The biggest change, and I'm just gonna, sorry to scroll through this so quick, but I know we got a big agenda today. When we started to talk about recreational uses, we did get several comments. I want to say there was 4 or so about equestrian use on the property. And we talked about this item for quite some time. In our conservation lands management plan, we limit equestrian use to our existing roads or trails that are exceed 48 inches with a turning radius of 10 to 12 feet. Those are kind of, that 48 inches with a large turning radius is kind of the low end of what a basic equestrian trail would be on a lot of our, you know, public lands around in our area and nationally. None of the trails that are built on the South Hills Spur or on Mount Dean Stone Preserve exceed 48 inches or have turning radiuses that would allow you to safely navigate with a horse on these properties. Additionally, we did get a lot of comments about parking and, you know, adding the ability, adding horses to this trail system that would not be able to safely accommodate them, and also recognizing that horses come with horse trailers that have to be offloaded at trailheads. CLAC recommended a pretty clear statement to just say that equestrian use is not permitted on the trails or trailheads of the Mount Dean Stone Preserve due to the way the trails were built, and then also user conflicts. The only other change to the plan was changing the map label on figure, I believe it's 5. And just kind of reinforcing what these restricted access zones that we have right here at the top of where what we're calling the corridor property hits the saddle property. And then also up around the private, this parcel of landlocked private property where the radio towers are. Although, you know, our policy is on trail recreation only, you know, I think there's certain areas, especially within this corridor, and then as you move over to here into some important wildlife habitat, where we are just getting it on paper that these are going to be areas where if we do see user-made trails or expansion, or 20 years down the road, we start thinking about adding more trails to this system, these are areas that we've identified as being, you know, areas where we'll actively discourage and be a little more heavy-handed in discouragement of public access or off-trail access. And so that is very well described in the narrative of the plan. And to reinforce it, we added just this little call out on figure number 5. I'm gonna leave it there. I can certainly give a little bit more of a rundown of the plan. John, I don't know if you want to chime in a little bit on the process that we went through with CLAC. I'd certainly be happy to take any questions or delve more into the public process if you'd like me to.
Be great to hear from you, John.
Yeah, I mean, the committee takes their role very seriously. I've learned that quickly, and they're very thoughtful and like to hash things out. Sometimes maybe getting very, very granular to the point that we have to remind them that that's not part of the plan. That's a management issue that will be dealt with after the plan is approved. There were a couple of things that were really, really talked about both this time and the month before, which were the dog issues in the winter. I know that that was discussed at our last park board meeting. And then this notion of equestrian access. And just due to the nature of the trails and how steep they can get, it just didn't seem safe or wise to allow for equestrian access. There was also more discussion on hunting and on trying to identify ways to keep people on trail as much as possible with signage and using fencing and things like that. So very thoughtful process. Every point was gone through. We used almost the entire 2 hours of the meeting on this topic. And I think it's been well thought out, and I support it.
Yeah, I would like to add, thank you, John. You know, there were some discussions, especially about hunting and current dog restrictions and closures where we decided not to make changes. We felt the plan really already backed up our intent and or it, you know, the comments got way into the weeds of enforcement rather than this overarching management plan. For your reference, though, that this document, we feel it's very important to not only document the public comment received, but also document the response and the discussion that CLAC had. And so that is fleshed out in this entire document and just kind of shows our decision-making process.
That's great, Morgan. Any other comments from Morgan or John? Be great to get a motion on the floor, please.
I move that the park board adopt the Mount Deanstone Preserve Recreation and Special Resource Management Plan.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Cassie, is there any member of the public that want to provide public comment?
No hands raised.
Seeing that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
I just want to make a comment. Nice job, Morgan. That was a long process and there were lots of changes and you were very patient with everyone. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I also do have to just throw a kudos out for Clancy Gendreau. I could not have pulled this together without him. It's been a tough season and he definitely did a lot of heavy lifting on this one. So thanks, everybody. We'll get
Yeah,
it.
he was great.
So is Meg here for the next agenda item?
No, I'll go ahead and take it.
Is that Shirley?
Yep.
Go ahead, Shirley.
So this is a request for use of enterprise fund to replace recreation equipment. A little background. Several years ago, we started assessing an additional fee to participant fees. So depending on what the activity is, it can range from $1 to $2.50 that goes into the enterprise fund and allows us to replace equipment as needed. This year, we've got a lot of rollover on equipment. It's reached its useful life span. And so Gretchen gave us a list of equipment that's going to be replaced. And the request is for $10,796. We may be able to lower that depending on if we can get bulk pricing. But in general, right now, that's what we're asking.
Any questions for Shirley?
Yeah, Shirley, this is Sonia. How much is in the fund right now?
There's a current balance of $15,438, and to replenish it, depending on the participation, we get anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 kids through the program a year, each paying into this fund to replace equipment. So the replenishing is fairly quick.
Okay, thank you.
John?
Hey, Shirley, this is John. The attachment with the agenda is for a wish list. And I just wanted to make sure that, because this referral item is for replacement of equipment.
It is.
The attachment is for a wish list of equipment. So I'm unclear really what that means.
Gretchen just mislabeled it. Sorry. It's replacement of equipment.
Okay.
So
And so the items listed in that attachment, just for the public, if they're looking at that, are items for replacement and not a wish list of new items in addition. Thank you.
correct.
Any other questions for Shirley? Are we ready for a motion? Be great to get a motion, please.
This is John. I'll go ahead and make the motion. I move the Parks and Recreation Board approve the following item: use of Equipment Enterprise Fund in the amount of $10,796 to replace needed recreation equipment for programs.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Any other discussion? Any members of the public who want to comment? Cassie, anyone raise their hand?
No, no public comment.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Wendy,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Shirley. We're moving right along. What time are the folks coming? They're coming at 1 o'clock?
Yes.
Go ahead, Donna.
All right. Well, thank you. The next agenda item is requesting the Park and Recreation Advisory Board review of our public process, as I will share with you, including the working group application packet, the selection criteria for working group members, and most importantly, to gain any your feedback regarding any type of edits or additions that you would like to see. A little bit of background. A community center for Missoula was identified as one of the Celebrate Missoula Millennial projects way back in 2000. And in fact, I'd been working with a number of citizens for a couple of years before that related to the public interest in having a recreation facility. So essentially an indoor park dedicated to recreation all day long, 7 days a week. We recognize that there are facilities at the University of Montana and throughout the school system, but most of those facilities, if not all, are not available during the typical school day. And in fact, in most cases, they're just simply not sufficiently available to grow or build any programs or to be a reliable indoor space. Much less are they designed for the kinds of recreational activities that we would like to see. So during the 2000 process, this community center concept, along with a central park at the fairgrounds and a Missoula endowment fund, were identified as three things that would make Missoula a better place to live, work, and play for the next 100 years. And so we're getting to that project. Surprising to us, we had always thought, or I had always thought, that the Currents Aquatic Center would likely be the last phase of a community center. And lo and behold, in about 2002, we figured out that McCormick, the old McCormick 50-meter Olympic pool was leaking horribly. And so we put all of our energy into that.
Donna, your voice is quiet again.
Thank you. I'm going to have to hold on here. All right, should be back. So we ended up doing the pools first. That did happen through a general obligation bond, and we ended up building Currents Aquatic Center along with Splash Montana and 4 of our local spray decks, all well received and well used. So we went through a series of processes. The 2004 master plan identified the need for a community center. The 2004 McCormick Park master site plan identified a footprint for the community center. There's been multiple iterations. We've tried working with a number of partners, from youth sport clubs in the basketball and volleyball arenas to different schools, including the largest public school system in Missoula. We've worked with Ballard and King Associates for feasibility studies and even preliminary pro formas or business plans. And every single time, including most recently the Downtown Master Plan and Climate Ready Missoula, we keep ending up back in McCormick with let's complete a community center as phase 2 of the Currents Aquatic Center, or create the Current Center for Recreation and Creativity. And I think it's really important to share that background. It's not unlike the Fort Missoula Regional Park project. It's a visionary idea. It's about quality of life, places to stay active. And we want to conduct a similar public process. For those of you who have been on the park board for some time, you are aware of the public process that Parks and Recreation likes to engage in. We take advantage of a local facilitator, usually Ginny Tribe. We have procured her for this process. We work with a working group. It's a standing group that takes us through the process. They help assure that we cast the net very wide and very broad and very inclusionary. We have secured an architectural team, MacArthur Means and Wells of Missoula, along with NAC of Spokane and Ballard and King, plus local engineering firms as needed. We will identify a list of stakeholders and host focus groups, and those stakeholders will range from technical stakeholders to potential user groups to other directors or CAOs of facilities in Missoula, like the library or the Y or ZAC, to make sure that we are meeting a niche in our community that is much needed. And in my work with this group for the past 20 years, we keep coming up with the same needs, same messaging. Our own programs need multi-use gymnasium space, childcare, pickleball, volleyball, basketball, every sport court idea you can imagine, indoor walking space. With climate change, more and more we need year-round quality air-controlled space and non-slippery surfaces for people to stay active. And dance. Dance is one of the most universal forms of recreation that also meets many different demographic, cultural interests, and is just constantly looking for new spaces in our community, and has an incredibly difficult place finding any space that they can call home for any length of time to really build a program. And I'm talking about dance of every single type. So the working group would consist of about 15 members. They would be broadly selected based on criteria by a steering committee. The steering committee is made up of a group of citizens I've been working with anywhere from the last 5 to the last 20 plus years. They've been incredibly active and supportive, very much like Friends of Fort Missoula Regional Park were through that entire process for 20 some years. Selection criteria, we really look for people who are not necessarily advocates for one kind of use. We're looking for people who can recognize the value of multi-generational, multi-use, sustainability and design, so that we can move with program trends and changes, and really so we can just meet the needs of the community, not only in the short term, midterm, but for a very, very long time. We are definitely looking through a lens of inclusion. We want folks to be visionary. We want them to keep sustainability in the forefront of their minds. We're looking to have the working group help us with public outreach, questionnaires and survey documents, identification of any challenges that they see, and opportunities we should be considering. They should be a broad spectrum of our community, representing neighborhoods, various user groups, especially user groups that have a a breadth of understanding of how facilities can be designed to best meet the needs of multiple users. They're definitely, we are strong believers that ADA is not nearly sufficient in meeting the needs of our populations. We need to go well beyond that. We want to meet with education at all levels, and not only for their use, but for their insight on facilities and public need out there. Who are they turning away? What kinds of programs are we not supporting? What kinds of programs belong in a community center as opposed to a strict education facility? Cultural heritage and historic preservation are always important. The fiscal side, business side, always important. And then of course, a number of at-large individuals. There's a time commitment. We're hoping to kick this project off with, if Park Board approves today, we will stand up an Engage Missoula site to begin looking for applicants for the working group right away. Eventually, by mid-April, we would hope to have more information and Engage Missoula on all the many ways that citizens can get involved. We look at the working group first working meeting being on probably actually April 29th. After talking to our consultants, April 20 and 21 will not work. So it will be April 29th, and we will make that edit. And we hope to wrap up the working group meetings by end of October, and hopefully be going to you, the Park Board and the City Council in November for adoption of a schematic master plan for phase 2 of the current Center for Recreation and Creativity. Zipping through the calendar, I wanted to share a little bit with you some of the public process we see, what technical work groups look like, what the working group looks like, what stakeholder groups will do. And then we have some initial project assumptions. And I've mentioned many of them, so I won't repeat myself again in the interest of time, and knowing how that this has been posted and that this is a preliminary document that is yet to be completely vetted through a thorough public process. Now, when I say a thorough public process, please keep in mind, we have been conducting public process off and on for 20 years and have a considerable amount of support for this concept. Now it's getting down to the details. What's really going to happen? How will the facility really be designed? Where will the spaces be arranged? Where's the entry door? We won't decide every color and every floor surface or finish at this time, or identify the exact HVAC or sound system, but we'll have a good narrative that goes with that. And with that, my request of you is to provide me any feedback, of course, to share with our steering committee and to make changes to the application packet. And then I am, of course, seeking your support and approval for our public process criteria and beginning assumptions and stakeholder lists.
Thank you, Donna, very much. So who's on the steering committee now?
Steering committee currently is Mike Sweet, Tarn Ream, Amy Ragsdale, Shirley and Ryan from our staff. And then we've had members from Missoula Aging Services, Summit Independent Living, Susan and Travis. And then from time to time, we've had various other members of the arts and sports communities involved. And those have been the key folks that keep returning. And then, of course, we've been involving Missoula Downtown Association and various stakeholders throughout the process.
And who will decide who will like to become a working group member?
What we would do is we would apply the criteria in the packet in the broadest sense possible, and the we would be the steering committee. And the reason we do that is we want the working group to be able to work in a full public environment. They are all public meetings, but they are not technically a subcommittee of Park Board. And so they are not specifically named by the Park Board as such a subcommittee, but you will see their work product and recommendations, and it'll be your choice to accept or change or tell the working group to go back to work.
Any questions for Donna?
Donna, this is John. A question with regards to the working group. that's a little bit of a different format than some of our other citizen groups that have, kind of created a bulwark of support and then come forward. Is this approach designed because it's been such a long-standing group and to really kind of get them cohesive so we can move forward with the process? Or what was the reasoning for going with this working group packet application?
This process is very, very much like the McCormick Park Master Site Plan and the Fort Missoula Regional Park Site Plan. And we could have looked at a process where we immediately jumped into stakeholder meetings and then brought you a final product. Because the term community center is not, it has so many different definitions depending on what part of the country you came from. And because Missoula has such a diverse population from so many areas, we wanted to make sure that we cast just the broadest net possible in as many public process ways that we could by having them run parallel and overlapping each other. So we have the best final design, we think, because it is our first community center. And by the way, by the National Recreation and Park Association standards, most communities our size would have at least 2, if not 3. So you might call the YMCA one of those. And maybe if you combine the library and MAC or, or ZAC as another. But anyway, that's why, John, we want a super robust and we want a shared vision. The other thing from my perspective is there's been enough change with the Climate Ready Missoula plan. Air quality, indoor air quality has become more and more important, more and more months. We used to only worry about winter. Now we worry about all the time. Our population has aged, obviously, as a total population over the last 20 years. And the pandemic has taught us some valuable lessons, I think, about the importance of air quality, the need for quality indoor spaces, the need for an incredible amount of childcare services. And so, and then the race-related challenges has certainly pointed out with the pandemic, challenges around equity, and a community center is absolutely a facility where we feel like we can achieve a greater level of equity throughout our community by doing inclusionary and diverse programming.
Thank you, Donna. Any other questions?
Yes, Donna, I noticed in the document you listed the working group, a steering committee, a public process group. Are these, I wasn't quite sure how they all interfaced. Are they all different groups?
They are all different groups. The steering committee is really made up of staff, the consultants, and the Friends group that has been working on this project for the last 20 years. And their primary role, our primary role right at this point, is to listen and to do all the legwork behind the scenes of setting up the meetings, putting together the questionnaires and all those kinds of things. The working group is made up of a diverse group of citizens that'll stay the same over the course of the process, so through November. The public group is more, that one's really dynamic and diverse, and it is generally a reminder that everything we do is in the face of the media, elected officials, advisory boards, and has a public component to it all the way through. And then the stakeholder focus group meetings are where we really hone down on how do we do sustainability? How do we design great dance space, great sports space, and so on. And so, yeah, they all overlap, and we share all that information back and forth to hopefully come out with a product that meets the community's needs, not only in space, but in the detailed design. And that we have shared language around that and what the intent of the facility will be when it finally is realized.
Thank you, Donna. Has the mayor been advised about this process?
Yes, the mayor's been advised. The council has approved the contract with MacArthur Means and Wells, and it has been in our document or our budget documents, and it's also in the mayor and council strategic goals.
And is there any potential funding like the Tiger Grant we did for Fort Missoula Regional Park?
There is some potential, none identified, like we had Tiger for the Bitterroot Trail. which, and then we were able to work with Missoula Redevelopment for the South Reserve Crossing to connect a low moderate income neighborhood with low level of service to Fort Missoula. But we also know how important having projects ready to go that are essentially what we've all termed shovel ready since the recession. There is some potential of also many partnerships with other development in the greater downtown Missoula area.
Thank you, Donna. Any other questions for Donna?
I just have a comment about how exciting I think it is. And two things. One is I think it really embodies what the Parks Department is doing that the public doesn't see. There's so much more that the Parks Department is doing. And so I hope, you know, when I picture it sort of like that becoming just really visible. And then the second piece is just thinking about our whole riverfront plans. And this is property that's on the riverfront. And so I don't know what the thinking is there, but we don't have anything really. I mean, we've got Karis Park on the other side. That's a public meeting space that's kind of beloved. And I think there's the opportunity to bring in again the whole community by thinking about the river piece of it and how we tie that in. Such an asset. And I don't see that specifically called out. So those are just my two thoughts.
And I'd have to second Wendy's, because I was in Williston, North Dakota last year visiting relatives, and they had this it was actually, it was there 2 years ago in the middle of the winter when it was 20 below. They have the most amazing indoor all-purpose recreation community center. Granted, it's really large because they have a lot of oil money. However, just the idea of multiple sports activities for children and adults occurring at the same time under the same roof, so everybody can continue doing sports and can in clean air, and regardless of the temperatures. It was phenomenal, and it was really neat to see something like that. And the place was just busy. Basketball tournaments going on while tennis is one other part. Then there's weight rooms up here, and then there's it was just phenomenal. So I'm really in support of something like this in Missoula. It's really necessary.
Thank you, Wendy and Margie. Have you worked at all with the congressional delegation on this, Donna?
Not to this date in any certain terms at all.
Any other questions for Donna? We're ready for a motion. Be great to someone move the motion, please.
I will be happy to make the motion, but I have to look it up. Exact wording. I move that we approve the process and working group. Is that the right motion?
Yes.
Application packet and selection criteria as presented, supporting robust public engagement to get a shared community vision for the current Center for Recreation and Creativity.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there a second?
I second.
Margie seconds it.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? Any members of the public that want to provide public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
So Morgan, are you here to give another update on conservation lands?
Urban forestry update a little later on the agenda.
Dale, I wonder if you want to take a grants item. It's an update on the OSAC criteria per the new bond language in the PROS 2019. We might be able to get that done before April and Eric. And then Morgan can have the rest of the meeting after April and Eric.
And Donna, once April, or is it Emily or April?
April.
And Eric, would you introduce them, please?
Yes.
Go ahead, Grant. Welcome, Grant. How are you? Your mute's on.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys. And I know that some folks are coming in at 1, so I'll use as much time as possible, and then I can always come back and do a more thorough presentation. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here.
I like your hat.
Hey, thanks. haven't gotten a COVID haircut. So yeah, so just quickly, I'll jump right in. I've been working over the last several months to update and rework our project evaluation process. So the way that we vet open space projects, which is a function of OSAC. And so I've been working with the newly formed project evaluation subcommittee of OSAC. And I want to thank those guys. Danny Gunlack was part of that. I want to thank those guys for their time. It was a lot of really good, robust discussion. And so basically with the passage of the 2018 open space bond, some new changes occurred, and the primary one being the eligibility of capital improvement projects, bond-funded capital improvement projects. So we wanted that to be reflected in the open space, process and tools. And I also think, as our community grows and evolves and changes, which it is fairly rapidly, if you ask me, we think something as important as, open space projects and the way that they're looked at and vetted also needs to change and evolve. And so that was sort of the catalyst for this whole reworking, if you will. And so lots of good input from partners like Five Valleys Land Trust, as well as, the OSAC itself and the subcommittee members. And so OSAC will be looking, they've reviewed this thoroughly and vetted this, and they will be potentially adopting this on Thursday. And I hope that you guys had enough of a chance to look at this. So between now and Thursday, please send me any comments, feedback, questions. I'm an open door. I apologize for the lack of time on that, but I hope that you guys know that, you can provide input and feedback. And so just quickly, I'll run through this, and I'm glad to talk offline about this. And I'm also glad to come back and do a more thorough presentation, like I said. So what you're seeing here, and let me know if you guys can't see this, but this is the application. So either, myself, if I was bringing an open space project through the process, or a partner like Five Valleys Land Trust, for example, would fill this out prior to going through prior to the committee, OSAC, actually vetting a project. So there's just a ton of information included here. And I want to point out that this isn't going to be a new burden or overly cumbersome for an applicant. All this information was already there. It's just a more clear and it lays out the city's expectations a little bit more clearly, so it's more consistent across projects, if that makes sense. And so basically we're asked, so it's a two-tier application process. The first one being basically a threshold of, is this project legal given the bond language, and is it eligible given the bond language and all of the different sort of legal checkpoints? And if so, then we would go to the second step. So that would be basically a staff level analysis. I would then present that to OSAC. We would have discussion, and if it is legal and eligible, we would move on to level 2. And I'm going to kind of zoom through this. You guys have access to this, so let me know if there's anything I'm missing or you have any comments. But the level 2 application is a bit more comprehensive, and so basically we're asking an applicant to provide all of the information that will be necessary for OSAC and the public to review projects. So we're asking for a series of maps and legal documents and things like that, all of which was already sort of required. It's just now in sort of a one-stop shop. It's a little bit more clear and consistent. And so basically this arms OSAC with all of the information, like I said, needed to make a very informed decision and recommendation to council. So this is sort of the front end, and we'll also be developing kind of a guide for this, so that new applicants can go and find there's instructions infused into this document, but I'm hoping that we can find the time to develop just a quick guide that provides just a separate document for how to navigate this process. That's something that I haven't had the time to do, but I've kind of started. And just as you see, we'll scroll through this, but we've captured here certain areas of open space value. So we've got sort of an overview section in project context, which is sort of the high level stuff. How does it meet our plans? How does it meet the bond language? What sort of open space bond objectives does a project further? And from there, we move into more specific, open space and conservation values related to the actual resource. We've got wildlife habitat, native plant communities, water quality and water resources, ag and working lands. Here's the rec and public use component, scenic and aesthetic values, and cultural and historic resources. And then we've got sort of a catch-all for other unique and exceptional values. And it's important to note, infused in all of that is, we've got some other sort of more intangible qualities like social equity and inclusion, making sure that we're distributing our open space projects, geographically, so that there's equity in the geographic context. And so those are sort of the broad buckets, and then within that, there's a lot of other sort of nuances, of course. And here's just sort of a required documentation list at the end, like I mentioned. My computer is kind of free.
Hey, Grant.
Here, but yeah.
Is this something you've been building on, or is this a complete rework with some existing product?
This is all like a brand new product.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if our 1 o'clock presenter is here, or if you want me to keep going.
Cassie or Donna?
We do have Eric joining the meeting from United Way. So we're waiting on Emily.
Yeah, let's go until about 1:05, Grant.
That's great.
Okay.
Well, any questions right now? Wendy, do you have any questions? Go ahead, Grant.
Okay. Let's see. So are you guys seeing the project evaluation worksheet document?
Yes.
Okay. So I kind of went through those sort of high level categories of open space and natural resource values. This is the project evaluation worksheet that the OSAC members actually use and fill out to evaluate a project to help and sort of inform their decision and to sort of facilitate discussion with an eye towards a recommendation to council, of course. And so you'll see as I scroll down through this that those same open space categories and values will be reflected here. So the idea is, again, that we've got, an applicant provides all of this thorough, sort of succinct information, and then it matches this document so that, an OSAC member can utilize that information as well as a site visit to really thoroughly vet a project. And so quickly, importantly, to note is that we grappled with whether or not we wanted to create sort of a points-based system and assign a number to a project for an actual score. My experience and the subcommittee agreed that assigning sort of an arbitrary score to a project is sort of wrought with some potential problems. The primary one being that a lot of times we're comparing apples and oranges, right? We've got such a broad spectrum of projects that we evaluate that a single number score creates sort of an arbitrary relativity, if that makes sense. And so what we've designed is sort of a high, medium, and low scoring structure. And again, it's kind of hard to grasp if you haven't gone through this. And I'm glad to come back and explain all of this more. But basically what we've got is those same, broad categories related to open space and natural resource values. And for each section, there's a series of questions, and an OSAC member rates each one as high, medium, low, or not applicable, and then sort of tallies that for each section. And then at the end, there's a table that you basically record the answers for each section in, and we're looking at basically high, medium, or low for the actual overall project score as well. So I've made it clear in this document at the beginning in the sort of instructions is that this is not intended to either kill a project, meaning if it's rated fairly low, that doesn't necessarily preclude a project from moving forward. If it scores very high, that doesn't necessarily mean a project will move forward. This is, again, a tool that helps facilitate a really informed discussion, and it helps inform this recommendation to council. So this is intended to be a guide, and again, just to help vet projects. So that's something really important to keep in mind. I've got 1 minute and I'm trying to get through a lot of information.
I do have a question, Dale, after Grant's done.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
I know you're just rushing through this and it's too bad because it's really good work. So thanks for that. In going back, I was just pulling up the document again to make sure that I wasn't missing something, but I'm thinking about conservation projects and what are some of the new elements that are being emphasized. And I don't see climate addressed specifically. Is climate in there somewhere?
Climate
not in
is
this
not
document, the last document.
the last document.
Yeah.
I
Criteria?
believe what, sorry, go ahead.
Just in the criteria, it seems like there should be some comment on, land is a huge part of the solution to climate. So there should be some kind of criteria about how would this project, sequester carbon through grass or trees or water or whatever.
Sure. I think the way that we've addressed that thus far is that we've sort of called out our climate plans. And so that's as far as it goes. So, how does it meet that plan? Or how does it parallel the objectives in that plan? But I think it's good input. I mean, we can certainly sort of call that out more explicitly. As far as carbon sequestration or something that specific, I can certainly add that. The reason why it didn't go that specific is that it's oftentimes, if you require something like that, certain folks, can't really provide that information.
That's
what I
you
was
got to be
getting
able
at,
to
is more of
measure
like
it. I was just thinking of climate more broadly and thinking about Biden's 30 by 30. And a lot of the states are going that way. Our state probably isn't going to go that way on an executive order. But something to think about, I think, moving forward. And the other one I had was tribal. You have in there a section on, identifying cultural or tribal resources, but I just wondered about, I was thinking more about like benefit. If it's tribal, if it has historic value as tribal property, how is the tribe involved? That's just a question. And then the third one was the equity piece, the same thing I always bring up. You talk about access, but I couldn't see where you really talk about access to all. Like, does this project, like Waterworks, the new trailhead, for instance, with the handicapped access? Or I just wondered if you think any of those things fit in here, or is that too fine of a scale?
So I think that some of that, I totally agree. I think some of that is included. There's a lot of information here, and I don't think I have time to point you to it, but I mean, there's just specifically related to equity. There's an underserved area question here, and
okay, I'll go back and look at it again.
Yeah, and reach out offline, please, if you want to further discuss this, because I'd love to.
Grant, thank you very much, everyone. I'm not sure what the pleasure of the board is, but I think you should come back in another month and present this again.
I think that'd be
I'd love
great.
to, and that was a lot of information to rush.
Sorry to rush you, too.
No, that's okay. I hope that was somewhat helpful, at least as an introduction.
So Donna, do you want to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. And thank you, Grant. And Dale, I think I was confused earlier. So let me start over with introduction of our guests. Today, we have two wonderful folks who have been working really, really hard for some time on addressing a number of challenges for unsheltered homelessness and housing in our community. And Parks and Recreation board members have had multiple discussions over the last several months and asked multiple questions. And so I wanted to get you factual information from the people who know best. And so with us today is Emily Armstrong. She's the Reaching Home Program Manager for the City of Missoula. And Eric Legvold, who is in charge of Impact programs with United Way. And I personally want to thank both of them because they do really hard work, and they've been wonderful communicators, super helpful to the Parks and Recreation Department, all the lands we manage, and most importantly, taking care of all people. And so I want to thank them, and I'm going to turn it over. I don't know if the two of you have a plan on which way you want it to go, but we have 7 park board members here and a number of our employees who are excited to learn more. And then we are also having Emily and Eric back to a staff training with our maintenance staff as we kick off spring, so that they can have a more in-depth Q&A on how to, what to, and get some advice. So Emily and Eric, can't thank you enough, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Donna. I'm Emily Armstrong, she, her. As Donna mentioned, program manager for Reaching Home. And Eric, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself.
And I'm Eric Legvold, Director of Impact at United Way of Missoula County. And I'll just be talking briefly about the logistical setup of our new temporary safe outdoor space. And I'll leave the rest to Emily's very capable hands to kind of explain the entire umbrella.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. So I'm actually going to share my screen. I have just a really brief PowerPoint to give a little more context about the things I'm talking about. So can you all see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I'm just orienting my video here. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to overview kind of the scope of our work and what's happening in Missoula, what the system is around homelessness, and some of the key terms that you may hear and acronyms. There's so many of them, some of the most common ones, and then break down a little bit of kind of what the areas that we're sheltering or where folks are living currently, some future plans that are coming forward in the city in the next few years, and some ways to be involved, and then just kind of open it up for some questions and conversation about all of this. So I'm going to share it this way rather than presenting because our screens are kind of weird. Okay, so just kind of a quick overview on the history. The At-Risk Housing Coalition is kind of a big umbrella organization that is a coalition of health and human service organizations, organizations that directly deal with homelessness response, as well as organizations who are kind of outside that world, but touch it in a variety of ways, given that homelessness is something that touches so many other social arenas. So the At-Risk Housing Coalition, it was originally created by another organization in 1993, but really formalized in 2004. And it's our continuum of care in Missoula. And so that's like the big organization. There's over 80 agencies that are involved in the At-Risk Housing Coalition. And that body has decision-making power over the Missoula Coordinated Entry System, which I'll talk about in a minute as far as policies and procedures go. So out of that, in 2011, 2012, the city and the county came together to create a 10-year plan to end homelessness, Reaching Home. So that's the program that I now manage. And it's nearing, as you can tell, the end of its 10-year life. So we're kind of looking at evaluation of what's happened over the last 10 years and really trying to do some reflection and understanding of where we've come, where we're going, where the gaps are, where the successes are, and what the next steps need to be. But this plan was created as a effort to put more action into the efforts to address homelessness and give some deliverable timelines and just really give a backbone to all of the efforts that were happening within and around the city. And so out of Reaching Home then came the Missoula Coordinated Entry System. And so you'll see that acronym as MCES. And coordinated entry systems are a best practice nationally to try to address homelessness and get communities to a functional zero of homelessness, which is there are no more people coming in than are going out. The number kind of zeroes out. So our coordinated entry system, or coordinated entry systems in general, what that means is basically a literal system, so a database, as well as kind of a theoretical larger system of agencies communicating. So we have the system that we created in 2017, and it is a way for all of the agencies that have resources for housing or for homelessness to streamline and collaborate on those resources to the end that an individual who's experiencing homelessness is not being sent to 5 different places before they get the information they need to be able to address their situation and get help. The goal is really to make it a more functional process, to decrease barriers for folks who are having a hard time with housing stability, and to help our system and our community be better utilizing the resources that we have, avoid duplication of resources, and really just make the process more streamlined and efficient throughout the city. So within the Missoula Coordinated Entry System, there are advertised access points. And so those are the places that we most commonly and most publicly send folks who are experiencing homelessness or having housing instability to get resource, to communicate with someone, share about their experience, figure out, what options they have, and then get into our actual physical database, our system, if needed, and then be kind of prioritized based on a variety of factors, including their level of vulnerability, their situation. There's quite a few factors that go into that prioritization. There are also non-advertised access points. So our advertised access points currently are 211 and the Poverello Center. Those access points fluctuate as far as the ones that are advertised and the ones that aren't advertised, just based on organizational capacity and kind of what's happening within the system. But those are our current 2. Recently, we had 2 others that just kind of are struggling with capacity right now. And so we're just trying to funnel folks to the places that have the best resources at the moment. And then we have non-advertised access points. So other places where if someone ends up at that organization or at that front door, they can be assessed, they can have that conversation and get into the system, just as they would at an advertised access point. But these are places that just don't have the same capacity. And so we're not trying to publicly direct people there, but they can do it if folks end up at their front door. And so there's many agencies throughout Missoula that offer that. And then there's also quite a few partner agencies. So these are organizations within Missoula that have resources that are related to homelessness, but aren't necessarily going to be putting anyone into the actual database system, which is called the Homelessness Management Information System. You might see that abbreviated as HMIS. So that may be somewhere like the Humane Society that can help with pet needs that you wouldn't necessarily think of as being a resource for homelessness or for individuals experiencing homelessness, but is actually, very relevant to those people's lives, and that many of them have pets and their pets are really important to them, and they may not want to go into or access a housing resource if they can't put their pet there, or if their pet isn't vaccinated. There's a lot of complexities around that. So anyway, it's quite a few agencies, some that you would think of immediately like the POV, and then some that you may not think of as immediately like the Humane Society. So those are kind of the 3 big acronyms and 3 big terms. And then I also wanted to just kind of go into an overview of our main, where are people staying, our main sites where we're trying to support folks right now. And this is just, 3 and then kind of a broad 4th. Folks are staying in all kinds of places and figuring out all kinds of solutions. And we always say housing and homelessness is one of the most creative fields. A lot of what we try to do with folks is housing problem solve. And so there's no one option. There's myriad solutions. People are figuring out all sort of creative ways to find a safe place to stay. But these are just some of the main ones that are happening in our community right now that we're really trying to bolster support for. So the emergency winter shelter is operated through the Poverello Center. It's at the Johnson Street Community Center. It's a temporary shelter just for the winter months, and it has capacity of 150. Previously, the emergency winter shelter has been housed at the Salvation Army. It was at the Johnson Street Community Center this year because it's a much bigger space, and with COVID protocol, we needed much more space in order to be able to house people safely. So that's why it was there this year. But if you've heard about Salvation Army in the past, it's the same idea, just different execution this year. Then the Poverello has their Broadway Street shelter, which is year round. I should say the emergency winter shelter is a low barrier shelter. So much more access. Folks who are on substances are allowed to be there. It's a behavior-based policy. So as long as they are operating within the policies around their behavior and being a good neighbor, they're welcome to stay. The Broadway Street shelter has a little bit more strict policies around that, but it's a year-round shelter. It has currently a capacity of 88 because of COVID protocol. That capacity, I think year-round is closer to 130, 140. I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere in there. So hopefully at some point we'll get back up to that number, but right now 88 is their number, and they are almost every night filling that, or have been throughout the COVID experience. And then we have the temporary safe outdoor space, which is a new temporary solution. And that's what Eric will talk more about. Eric, I'll go through all these four, and then I'll let you chime in more about that one. It's a big collaborative effort between Hope Rescue, United Way, Missoula County, and a variety of other agencies. We have Partnership Health Center and Western Montana Mental Health Center that are providing services on site and really big contributors to the effort. But it is a temporary COVID response and has capacity of up to 40 right now if each tent had 2 people in it, but not all tents do, and has been operating somewhere around 25 for most of the time it's been open. And then we just have other outdoor spaces. So folks have probably heard quite a bit about Reserve Street. There's, people who are staying in many places around town, parks and streets downtown and all kinds of places, and RVs parked on streets, as you all know, that are just not intended for human habitation, but are temporary solutions for folks that we're trying to work with. Eric, do you want to say a little bit more about TSOS right now?
Sure, you gave a great overview. As Emily has said, that this is a specific response to the pandemic, and our local government officials saw a need, particularly with those that weren't willing to congregate within the winter emergency shelter or the Poverello Center, and that have had a history of living outdoors. We wanted to be able to provide something that was an opportunity that provided a safe, secure, and service-rich environment that was 24/7 staffed, and that really kind of was meeting the individuals where they live, providing the services directly to them. That also, we wanted to build out the site that was a safe and secure opportunity for our emergency officials that were responding to many of the calls to other areas of town that these individuals were residing at. So having this kind of safe, secure, sanitary, and environment really has proven, to do very well. I'll get into more details of kind of the positive results as we go into Q&A. But that this is a temporary encampment that we have provided for response to COVID, and that it is a safe environment for individuals to kind of use it as that stepping stone to get into permanent housing, because it is a housing first initiative, and we're pretty proud of where we are at today. And then I'll let us go through and answer in the Q&A.
Awesome, thanks, Eric. And I should add, there is one other that I'm realizing I didn't put on here, which is the non-congregate shelter, which has been city county operated through the Missoula City County Health Department. And that is a sheltering that's also a COVID response. It's being housed mostly at Sleepy Inn. And so that's for folks who are positive for COVID or are identified as a close contact, but don't have a safe place to self-isolate, whether that's that they are unhoused or that they live in a shared house and can't isolate safely there. And so that response has supported upwards of 250 unique individuals so far, and is truly a main reason why our other shelter spaces have been able to operate so well. This non-congregate shelter has been where folks at the shelters, if they test positive or are tested as a close contact, can go safely to remove themselves from the shelter environment and have a safe place to go through that experience. So that's been a critical piece of our COVID response as well for our homeless populations. So then moving right along, looking more towards what is coming down the pike. So you've probably heard about Trinity Housing and the Bellagio. These are two big initiatives that are upcoming to try to help build housing stock for some of the folks in these populations. Trinity is an effort between Homeward, Missoula Housing Authority, and Blue Line Development. It'll have 2 sites, so 202 rental homes. And within that site, this one has a big piece that's tied to our homelessness initiatives, in that it has a navigation center in the design. And that navigation center is intended to serve our folks experiencing homelessness, our neighbors who need a little bit more support. The services are still in process of being designed, but our vision is, a place where folks can go have, their services, their needs triage. We can do ID, gather ID documentation, get folks IDs on site. People can come if they need a place to stay and sober up. All of this is in process. None of it is firm, but it's really, the vision is to be kind of a centralized location to help our larger homelessness population and be able to provide wraparound services all in one place so that people don't have to be going to a variety of locations. And Trinity will also have 30 permanent supportive housing units on the Mullen site, and those are intended for our FUSE population, which is our frequent user system engagement program. So the folks who are experiencing homelessness in our community, who are most utilizing our resources, so our hospitals, our jails, our emergency services, our homeless outreach team, and just really need a place to live, need a home. And so that's what those 30 units are for, as well as all the other rental units that will be there for the lower income populations of Missoula. And then Bellagio will not have a navigation center. It's just 200 unit apartment complex. We'll have 24 project-based voucher units, and it'll be, again, for people making 60% of the area median income. That's what that acronym is. So that's what's coming down the pike, as well as, many other initiatives that are happening and being put together by all the agencies in Missoula that are working around this. But these are kind of the two most robust efforts for actual housing stock. And so then just some ideas on how to get involved. I think one of the biggest ways is to just talk about it and talk about it with informed knowledge. So really using language that humanizes our neighbors that are struggling or that are experiencing homelessness, talking about people who are experiencing homelessness as opposed to homeless people, so that homelessness doesn't become their identifying feature, and being willing to talk about it with folks you run into at parks or wherever it is, and hear about their experiences and learn about them as individuals and just talk about it openly. The other thing is we are launching a newsletter, which is very exciting. So that newsletter will start this month. The first one should come out next week, and it's a partnership with United Way. And so that's a quarterly newsletter just to share what's going on with Reaching Home, with the homelessness initiatives in Missoula. And you can sign up for it on the city website or on United Way's website. And I can drop those links in the chat later if it's helpful, but there it is on the screen. You can join the Housing Advocate Network. So that's through the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative. And if you're interested in that, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. Donna has my email, or I can also put that in the chat, and I can connect you with Zeke, who leads that effort. And so that is a group of volunteers who are just advocates for people who are experiencing homelessness, and you get connected to an individual who's trying to navigate their situation, and kind of just walk alongside them with whatever they need. It may be just listening. Sometimes that's all it is. It may be going to meetings with them or helping them figure out who they need to call. In some situations, it's really intensive, and in some situations, it's pretty low lift. But the volunteers that do it are amazing, and it's a really good way to be involved and to support our community. And then the last is connecting landlords, or if you're a landlord yourself, getting connected with the Property Partner Program through Homeward. So that's a program that Homeward has launched. They have a landlord liaison who manages it, and it's really to build support for landlords who are willing to rent to the populations that we're working with. They have the folks that we're working with that engage with this program have a lot of wraparound services, and so we try to make them less risky renters in that sense. And then the Property Partner Program offers a rent or a risk mitigation fund in case something goes wrong, and the fund kind of back pays that if something happens, but really just trying to boost relationships with landlords to demonstrate that these folks that are working with us are just as solid of renter as anyone else, and have a lot of really supportive services to make sure that stays true. So just some ways to be involved. I think that kind of wraps it up. I'd love to open it up to questions if folks want to ask anything.
Thank you, Emily and Eric. This is Dale Harris, Chair of the Board. I'd like to open up questions for both the board and the staff, if you have questions for Emily or Eric. John.
Thanks for the presentation, guys. That was great information. Eric, question for you on the temporary shelter that's the outdoor facility. Have you had any difficulties, or can you talk about ways that people can help as far as transportation for individuals who may otherwise be currently located pretty far away and getting down there, and then any struggles that they may have getting out of there, and how that has been impacting your program.
So for transportation purposes, well, one, the location that we selected was provided by a private landowner, and was a kind of one of those miracles that really put this in motion. As for transportation, we wanted to make sure that we had access to close proximity to bus lines, and we are within approximately a couple hundred yards from the Walmart where the Mountain Lion has a stop at, and they're able to access that through that existing Missoula bike path along 93 to get to that kind of intersection stoplight, to have a safe opportunity to get across the street to that location. For some of the other services that we are providing on that location, we have case managers that do arrive on site to pick up the individuals, to take them to their meetings and their needed kind of community days where they'll go pick up some stuff, medication, some administration stuff that they need to file. That is provided by their case managers. The Hope Rescue Mission and some of the other faith-based organizations provide shuttle services to the River of Life Church's food bank, their mini food bank, and then also to the Christian Life Center for showers. So they have a number of opportunities to get transportation around town. Other than that, I think that, it would take moving mountains to really get a mountain lion to have a stop there. The other thing is that we want to make sure that we are honest with the community, that this is a temporary response that is based on the emergency declaration of the pandemic. So to put anything permanent out there, we want to be very careful about that. If we can kind of circumnavigate that and provide the opportunities for transportation, I think that we're kind of covering the gaps there. Is there anything like directly specific that you're?
No, that's a great answer. Thank you.
The other thing about access that I would say, I'm sorry, Dale, is that, we wanted to make sure that the access to the site was navigable by our emergency services. And so when there is something that happens, that ambulance can pull up directly to the site, to the platform where that tent is and where that resident is in need of emergency services. And that we also built it out where the fire engines can actually have a turnaround, rather than what's been happening in recent past at the Reserve Street Bridge, where we have police cars and fire engines that are parked halfway in the street and halfway on a sidewalk, which is an utter nightmare for traffic purposes, but also for the health and safety of the emergency service professionals that are responding.
Thank you, Eric. Donna.
My question is one that has come up at our park board meetings over and over. Emily, you mentioned zero net. And what I think many of our employees who work in the field on a daily basis, at least anecdotally, feel that the numbers have gone up in our parks. And I'm wondering where we're truly at in the zero net, and if the numbers that have gone up might be more a sign of the pandemic than of reality, or where we were headed.
A great question. I'm going to give you a pretty unsatisfying answer, I think, but I don't have a data point to be able to respond right now. That's one of the big challenges of our program right now is our data capacity, and we have a grant right now to actually increase our better our systems around data. So I can't provide you here's where we were and here's where we are now, although I hope to be able to do that in the next year. I think most of my response is going to be speculative and anecdotal. I think the pandemic definitely contributes to what's going on and the numbers we're seeing. I think there's a variety of challenges going on as far as our outdoor spaces, not the temporary outdoor space, but our spaces like Reserve Street and our encampments, and shifting dynamics there as far as the narratives residents are being told as about whether they're welcome in those spaces anymore. There is increasing enforcement of those spaces that's coming down the line. And so folks are having to figure out alternate solutions for where they're staying. I think the pandemic also, there's folks who were maybe living in shared spaces before that don't feel safe doing that now and are unsheltered at times when they weren't previously, just given to their state, given all of the pieces related to COVID. So I don't have a solid answer, and I wish I had a better measurement tool, but that is something we're working on as I'm kind of coming into this program in the evaluative stage, really trying to look at exactly that and measure, did we make progress on this? We're absolutely still oriented towards functional zero, and that's definitely the goal. And that effort is population specific. So we look at functional zero in veteran population, we look at it with transitional age youth, and then we look at it with the more broad population. And so we're in different places with all of those, like transitional age youth. We weren't seeing a lot of that. We have seen an uptick recently, and that's been interesting. We're trying to work with our youth homelessness demonstration project to figure out what that trend may be. And yeah, so that's my answer. It's not particularly useful, but
it's okay.
Thanks for asking.
Margie.
Okay, Emily, it's a question that's really similar to Donna's. Is that was quite a comprehensive housing plan that was developed in 2011 in terms of how to deal with homeless issues, and had many strategies, outcomes. And is there an effort to, now that 10 years has been up, to summarize it all and say, okay, back then we did this, to summarize all these activities?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yes, that is what I'm orienting towards right now. So we don't know yet if we're going to create another plan. My goal is really to do a really comprehensive evaluation process over the next year or so, hoping to start rolling it out in late April, sometime in the spring, late spring, and really do a series of surveys and focus groups, and meet with all the folks who are involved in the system, people who have lived experience and have different perspectives to share as far as whether they've been involved in our system or if they feel like it hasn't addressed their needs, folks who are working in it, community members, et cetera, and be able to take all of that evaluative data as well as more data points, being able to finally go back in and say, okay, here's the number we gave ourselves. Did we meet it? Where are we at? And use that information to dictate, do we need another plan? What do we need? Ideally, I'd really love to bring all of that back to the community and say, here's what we heard. What do you think? How do we want to orient? So that's kind of the vision right now, is within the next year or so to, yes, go through an evaluation process and really look at what happened over the last 10 years and then use that process to steer us forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Emily or Eric?
I had one more that I wanted to pester you with. Could you explain to the board and the staff a little bit more about what the outreach team does?
Happy to, yeah. So there are many outreach efforts within Missoula. There are different agencies that have outreach workers. So, and when I say outreach or outreach worker, I mean folks who are on the streets, walking around, interacting with our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, often folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness, but they also go to the shelters and go to some of the other places that are not unsheltered spaces, and really try to do one-on-one relationship building and assessments and care coordination to try to support as many people as possible. So the homeless outreach team is operated through the Poverello Center, and that is part of a larger group of folks that come together called the Coordinated Outreach Team. And so you might see those two things abbreviated as HOT for the Homeless Outreach Team or COT for the Coordinated Outreach Team. And those are just, Homeless Outreach Team, I think, has 7 members right now, which is the biggest it's ever been, which is so awesome. You may see them walking around. They're usually in bright orange so that they're pretty identifiable. And they do go to different areas around the city. They'll be walking around downtown. They go to Reserve Street. They go to Johnson Street. They go to, all the different spaces where folks may be staying. they have access to that database system, that homelessness management information system, and can actually do assessments with individuals that they come across if those folks need to or want to get into the system and be prioritized for resources. But a lot of what they do is really just relationship building. They know folks who are, and this is for coordinated outreach team as well as homeless outreach team, they know essentially every person that's outside unsheltered experiencing homelessness by name. And it's amazing. They know so much about all these individuals and are just doing everything they can to support them, meet them where they're at, talk to them, learn about their life experience. So they are, I would say, like our biggest champion for the efforts on the ground of what's happening. And yeah, our soldiers on the ground. So that's an awesome group of people. If you run into them, chat them up, say hi, they're doing great work. And there's Hope Rescue Mission is also very involved in coordinated outreach. April Seat leads a lot of that work as well, and works very closely with Riley Jacobson, who kind of coordinates for the HOT team. And they're both amazing individuals who know so much about our neighbors who are unsheltered right now. So yes, thanks for asking.
I would say that April seat is critical to the success of the TSOS. She's got a very long-standing, intimate relationship with many of the individuals that have transitioned into permanent housing, that have stayed on site at the TSOS, and I give my kudos to her long-standing work and intimate relationship building with our unsheltered population, and give her the credit for why the TSOS is so successful.
Yeah, a lot of our work would not, TSOS and homelessness efforts in general would not be possible or successful without our coordinated outreach team members. So yeah, they're a big piece of the puzzle.
Can you explain the difference? I got mixed up with the homelessness, HOT and the COT. Can you do that?
So many acronyms, absolutely, yeah. So COT, Coordinated Outreach Team, is just kind of the umbrella body that is the coalition essentially of all of the folks who are doing outreach work. So it's kind of just the space where they come together as a coordinating team. Homeless Outreach Team is the specific team that's operated under the Poverello Center to do that work. And so they're a specific team of currently 7 that's part of that larger coordinated outreach team umbrella. They're probably the largest organized effort as a single body, the homeless outreach team. But there are other outreach workers from many agencies throughout Missoula, including Hope Rescue Mission and Human Resource Council, and a variety of places have outreach workers that are also part of that COT umbrella.
I have a follow-up. Is that all right, Dale?
Yes.
So if you notice people are experiencing homelessness, maybe they have a vehicle, but you notice that they're around a park, around town. I just wonder about, like, they're not hurting anybody, they're not doing any damage to the park. If you called the homeless outreach team and said, here's this person, does that put the person into a system, like even if they don't want the help or need the help? So that's okay.
Great question. Yes, we are all about, offering resources and giving folks autonomy and power over their own experiences. So no, calling homeless outreach team does not put them into the system. Okay. All it does is alerts homeless outreach team to let them know that, like, hey, here's a space where someone might be or where people might be staying, and they may add it to their list of places to go check out and talk to the person, get to know them. They're not going to add anyone to any systems without, getting full consent, release of information, all of that first.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sean.
Sorry, another follow-up question. I might have missed it when you were talking about this, but as a component of either the COT or the HOT, do you have like mental health volunteers as well involved with that?
Yes and no. The real answer is no. I will say that is one of the areas in our system that we've identified as the biggest gap right now is the mental health response. We don't have a great agency or location in Missoula that is a quick response or a long-term response to the mental health needs, which are, yes, very intertwined with the experiences of many folks who are experiencing homelessness. So many of these individuals on coordinated outreach team have learned experience in navigating those challenges, but they are not many. I won't say not all of them. There are probably some in that team who have actual mental health backgrounds, but the majority of folks on that team are not trained to deal with mental health crisis response. But that is an experience they run into often. And so, like I said, they have lived experience on how to navigate that. But yes, that is, I will say, one of the gaps in our system that we're trying to look at, how to build a response to that.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, there's such a wide range of people who are experiencing this, and that's an area that I feel is so underserved, and it creates problems. And if we're talking about also community policing, adding elements of this to address conflicts, I know that there's some conflicts that my office is close to the reserve camp, and so there are quite a few conflicts over here on a regular basis. And boy, getting that mental health component added, I think, would help so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate your attention to that challenge. I think two resources we have to kind of support that gap in the meantime are, one of them is totally escaping me, but one of them is the mobile support team. Oh, I know the other one. The mobile support team, which is an element that was just added as an emergency service response. And so they can be called if there is an actual escalated crisis and they need to come. That's an EMT and a social worker that will a licensed clinical social worker that will come by. But we also have right now a Master's of Social Work student who's working with our police department, with the Business Improvement District folks, the two officers who are on that beat. And he is amazing and providing a really great, service to fill that gap by walking around with them, getting to know folks. He's stepping in and providing kind of that social work, mental health crisis response as needed, and providing us a model as a city for what it looks like to have a social worker walking around with our police. So that's an amazing resource, and he has been doing amazing things to kind of connect folks with the system and be able to de-escalate on site when those situations come up. So something to be looking towards as a city ourselves and making that more of a long-term partnership.
I think Dale will have to go on to Morgan and Marie, but Emily and Eric, on behalf of the board and all of us here at Parks, we can't thank you enough for your guidance and efforts in this area.
Thanks so much for having us. It's always great to talk to new folks.
Thank you, Emily and Eric. Yeah. Hey, Emily,
thank you very much.
Would you forward your PowerPoint to Donna?
Absolutely, yeah. And I was going to send the action items at the end. I'll send those in that email too, since that you couldn't put the links or anything.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Feel free to reach out anytime. Bye.
Morgan and Marie, you're up.
All right. This presentation up.
We wanted to make sure none of you would be bored this month.
All right. Well, Marie and I have prepared a little urban forestry program update. We're going to kind of go through this pretty quickly. As you guys know, we like to get out and talk about all the great work that we do. You guys are usually first on the list. We'll be planning on taking this on to other advisory boards and committees, and then moving on to council. To get right into it, I'm really going to provide just a snapshot of what we did in 2020 and long-term plans, a little bit of some long-term plans, and then priorities for next year. So obviously you guys are very aware that through reorganization, we created this new ecosystem services division. I'm not going to get way into the details. I love this photo of some day camps taking full advantage of ecosystem services being provided by a tree on a hot day. But one of the things that we're really trying to do as a division is reanalyze and look and update the work we do to really align more with these broader benefits that all of these this green infrastructure that we manage provides to our community. Give you a little idea of the structure again of the program. Ecosystem services superintendent. That's what I've been elevated to. On the left there, you've got the conservation lands program. And on the right, you've got the urban forest program. The urban forestry program is a little unique, unlike in the fact that they actually have an advocacy group, Trees for Missoula, that does really help and facilitates a lot of the work and education and outreach and funding that we do for the urban forest. So what kind of work do we do? We had a lot of discussion about this, and really, there's such a variety of things that we do on any one day to day. And so to really kind of pull it into 4 broad categories. Overall, we have several different management plans that we touch. Obviously, the master plan for the program is the Urban Forest Management Plan. We also work towards goals set forth in the Open Space Plan, the Master Park Plan. And then one of the things we've really been trying to do in 2020, and 2020 is, if one thing it's allowed us to do is to really spend a lot of time thinking about the work we do, is to see how we can adapt what we do to fit the recently adopted 2020 Climate Ready Missoula Plan, which I think is just a great piece of work that recently came out. Really boots on the ground management goal is we certainly, and these arborists that are out there day to day, are directly reducing city liability, protecting private property, reducing public hazards. There's not a week that goes by where there's not multiple different things that or jobs that they have to conduct to meet this goal specifically. I think the other thing that the program does that's kind of unique is it really does work with a bunch of other departments within the city, and of course divisions with our own Parks and Rec department. But it's really guiding that overall development of our urban forests, not just through the strategic plantings that we do, but also through public education to teach people how to care for trees and why they're important, getting them engaged in the field for volunteerism, and then really, nuts and bolts actually doing private development reviews. And one of the things that I think has really been, concreted in is Marie's relationship with development services this year to really provide that voice for the trees, for lack of a better term, as new development comes. Again, high levels of collaboration, certainly with urban forestry and conservation lands now being under this larger ecosystem services umbrella, we're already seeing a lot more collaboration happening between those 2 individual programs, but we have a lot of collaboration with our Developed Parks and Trails program, and then of course, other city departments. And we've got some really cool work that I believe is coming up in the next few years that we're going to tell you about. So some of our broad goals here, I think this is really, we kind of at early 2020 and spent a lot of time trying to just reanalyze, okay, what role do we play? Let's look internally and figure out how we can do better and where we want to move to. And we came up with some kind of short-term work goals. One of them is really breaking down silos, and that is starting to work more directly with community planning, more directly with our offices of development and mobility and Missoula Water. And then trying to really move the bar. And I think, Chris Boza did a fair amount of this before he left. He definitely laid some important groundwork, but making sure that all these other departments that are working in our right of way and our public spaces are also adopting our tree standards and protecting our trees. It's not just us knocking on the door trying to get them to do that. We've really got some really cool new software that we've been playing with as far as protecting high value trees. We definitely are increasing our standards, and I think it's important to note that as we improve maintenance, these well-maintained trees are going to be healthier and safer in the long run. We've actually got some examples later on in the presentation to show you about that. We really are trying to work more sustainability and into the work we do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The other big thing that we're looking at, and this is a little further out, is this whole right tree, right place. And you've heard this before, making sure that you don't plant a tree that's going to grow into power lines. But we are taking a more non-traditional holistic view of right tree, right place, and starting to bring in other standards like certainly soil types, but also carbon sequestration, areas of shading, social equity, and starting to bring in these other standards into our decision-making process. And that's something that's evolving, and I'm really pleased with how it is evolving. give you some of our big 2020 accomplishments. Not only did we work on some yoga this last year, this is a group that helped with our gravel bed nurseries. But I'm not going to dwell on all the misery of 2020. I think it really, some opportunities presented themselves, and it really allowed us to start to move things forward and approach our work differently. Some of the stuff that we did make some good headway on our sustainability plans. One thing we did was we moved a lot of our gas-powered chainsaws to electric. Electric batteries have gotten better. We're getting really high-powered electric saws. This is overall decreased our carbon footprint. You know, we're not running those combustion engines. We're not running to the gas stations to pick up gas. And it's really increased our worker protection by, these guys that are working in the trees, they come in at the end of the day and they'd smell like exhaust. They've been running gas-powered engines all day. That's no longer an issue. They're not coming in, they're not breathing that pollution. And they're also, these things are a lot quieter. They're not having as much noise pollution. The other thing, and this is really combining, some of that collaboration, is really merging some of our habitat goals that we have for our conservation, our open spaces, into how we manage our urban forests. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these. Marie's going to get into a little more details on all these. Another thing, and this is going to, this isn't, this gets me excited because it really did help us organize our system better. But it's not something that outwardly is super sexy, or a lot of people maybe even understand that we have this program within Parks and Rec. But we've got an internal CSR, customer service request system. And it's never quite worked quite well. And we took some time to reorganize it to really improve our customer service. And what we found, we've gone all digital, so we've eliminated our paper waste. That was also a big benefit of the pandemic and us trying to stay a little more separate. But we've also created a new priority level system. And what we found is we've been completing CSRs quicker. We've been addressing major issues a lot quicker. And we've not had work falling through the cracks, which I think is great. We're not having CSRs that are lagging for years. And so we've become more responsive. The last big update is our tree inventory. And, this actually was a big benefit of the pandemic. We just gotten this new inventory software. We did an inventory back in 2013, but it wasn't great. And so this was great work to send folks out individually to collect data and actually commit time for our own city arborists, who are the professionals in this field and who are going to be using this system to do work on trees, to do this inventory. And right now, we've got a current inventory of just over 30,000 trees. And we anticipate when the inventory is complete, we'll probably add another 20%. So we'll actually, for the first time here, hopefully in 2021, have an actual full snapshot of our urban forests. So I'm going to turn it over to Marie real quick to get through some of the nuts and bolts. I want to let you know, I made sure, we got some great photos of guys doing tree work. This is the arborists that are employed by the city. And so it's always important for me to get that kind of info in here as well. But Marie, if you want to take it away and talk about a bit of our sustainability and these habitat trees, that would be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Morgan, so much. Thank you, everyone, for having us. This slide, really what we were trying to show is the difference between what we used to call traditional urban forestry practices and actually combining a lot of those practices for habitat from conservation lands. So the slide there on the left is one of our forestry crew arborists removing a golden willow along a waterway in a park. This tree is an invasive species that it's a beautiful park tree, but also had a lot of high risk associated with it and multiple failures. So this is one we were able to remove completely. The other two pictures here show a black cottonwood that, even though it does have some high potential for failure, the crew was able to go up, climb this tree, and remove large sections of it to make it much safer, reduce that liability, but also retain that habitat and that really important carbon sequestration value that black cottonwoods provide. It's also really important because we're providing that ability and that potential for a lot of that cross training and collaborative efforts between the two divisions that we didn't always have in the past. Let me go to the next slide, please, Morgan. Thank you. So this is a quick snapshot of our new inventory software. The green dots, as you can see, those are active trees that are inventoried and updated. The purple and yellow, and then the red, those are planting sites, stumps, and trees that were recently updated. But the really important thing about this is the tab here kind of blocks it, but we have real-time, constantly updated ecosystems benefits provided by iTree software that's linked to our inventory. And so if one of the crew members goes out, clicks on a tree, updates it, these numbers immediately update. So if they add a tree, if we remove a tree, we have very, very accurate data now. One other thing that's really important is in these, you can see in the pie chart here, the tree pie chart, is those actual values of carbon that's sequestered in the CO2 reduction section, the energy savings that the urban forest as a whole is providing, the property value increase that they provide. All of these numbers are calculated constantly. It's calculated based on the information that the arborists enter. So diameter, condition, species, location of the tree, all of this goes into some pretty complex algorithms that that's built into the software, and then is just displayed in a constant running loop. We do have, just like Morgan said, a little over 30,000 trees. As of the first, when we pulled this number, we had 30,293, which was a pretty substantial increase from the 2013 inventory. Let's see, yeah, so I think we're done with this slide. So the start of our, by the numbers work that we did, we had 100 trees that the crew planted in-house. That was split between the spring and the fall. So we did 2 plantings this last year. And then 78 trees our volunteers planted. Part of that was the open space bond reforestation project. Actually, all of that was. Crews and contractors removed 200 trees over the year. Over 1,000 trees were pruned, which was pretty impressive considering all of the social distancing requirements of the last year. We started our new CSR program. We started tracking those numbers and really got that implemented in October. And so since October, we've had over 500 inspections completed. So not all of those resulted in a work order that was generated. Some of those were for new houses to make sure that the new trees were planted, that kind of thing. But that was pretty awesome to see actually how much work our CSR system generates. And then over 100, or just about 100, were completed by the crew.
Hey, Marie, how many more slides do you have?
Morgan, how many? We have quite a few more,
we've got quite a bit. We can definitely, I can give you a quick 30-second synopsis. I know we're out of time.
I don't want to rush you guys, but we need to end the meeting.
Yep.
So we need to reschedule this presentation.
Okay, that sounds great. We will, let me stop sharing, and we will come back again.
Thank you.
Yep.
I know we've lost Wendy already. Any other business for the order of the board or the meeting? David, I want to welcome you again.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words and the welcome. And as I said before, I'm really looking forward to this. I'm glad that I got going into it.
Great. It'd be great to get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you for a great meeting. Morgan, sorry that we were so abrupt.
No, I understand. It was a packed agenda. We'll come back.